Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something fundamental. It's this tension, this conflict that so many ambitious people feel. We're exploring the surprising connection between ambition and stillness, and specifically that ghost that haunts high achievers. The guilt. That relentless guilt when you even think about taking a break. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about, especially if you operate at a fast pace. Running a business, maybe raising a family, juggling big projects, or just pushing yourself to be better. It hits you, maybe late at night, right? Your body's exhausted, but your mind, wide awake. Just scrolling through that mental to-do list, all the things you didn't quite finish, the calls you missed, the opportunities slipping by, that gap between where you are and where you think you should be. And under all that mental chatter, there's this little voice, maybe not so little sometimes, whispering, "You don't deserve to rest yet, keep going."
And it's crucial right from the start to understand this isn't just your personal failing. That feeling of unearned rest, it's practically a cultural script we've all internalized. So our mission today really is to challenge that script head on, this core belief that rest is some kind of reward you only get after you've completely run yourself into the ground. We've looked at neuroscience, ancient wisdom, and, well, the consensus is building this internal pressure cooker. It's not discipline. It's often, as one analysis put it so well, a kind of wound dressed as discipline.
Wow, a wound dress is discipline. That phrasing, it just shifts everything, doesn't it? It takes it out of the realm of personal willpower failure and reframes it. It's like an internalized bug in the system that needs healing, not just more brute force effort.
Exactly. And that leads us to the core idea for this whole deep dive, which honestly feels pretty radical in today's world. What if rest isn't the opposite of doing things? What if it's not the enemy of progress, but actually its most vital foundation? We want to explore a path to success that actually fuels you, that nourishes your energy instead of demanding you constantly drain your own battery just to keep up.
Okay, let's start by unpacking that guilt chain you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because it feels like the main thing holding people captive here. We live in a world obsessed with measuring output, right?
Yeah.
Everything has to be quantified. And somehow, stillness, just being, has become pathologized. It's seen as lazy, weak, a luxury you can't afford.
Or worse, morally suspect. While at the same time, we weirdly glorify burnout, it's almost become this badge of honor, like we're competing over who's the most exhausted, the most depleted. It's a strange kind of competitive martyrdom.
Competitive exhaustion. Yeah, I see that everywhere. Why do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, it often connects back to a pretty deep-seated identity issue. We're constantly, maybe subconsciously, tracking our rest debt on some kind of internal spreadsheet. If we stop producing, if we're not visibly achieving, we feel our value diminishes. Because we've outsourced our sense of worth to external validation. What did I ship today? How many likes did I get? What's my promotion track look like? Buddhist philosophy has a really useful term for this underlying hum of dissatisfaction. Dukkha.
Right, dukkha. People usually translate that just as suffering, but it sounds like it's more nuanced in this context.
It is, definitely. It's not just overt pain.
Yeah.
In this context, dukkha is that specific stress, that pervasive unease that comes from clinging. Clinging to what? Clinging to this fragile, temporary identity that's built entirely on your output, your quarterly results, your follower count, your latest project launch. So if that's who you think you are, then stillness, rest, downtime. It feels like an existential threat. If I stop, do I stop being valuable? It's deep anxiety, but it masks itself as being productive.
That makes so much sense. If rest threatens my core sense of self, of course I'm going to resist it. I'll invent things to worry about. I'll keep that mental checklist running at 2 a.m. because that inner critic is terrified that if I actually truly stop, I'll just disappear, become irrelevant. How do you even begin to break that cycle?
The break often comes from seeing a completely different way of operating. And we can look to ancient contemplative traditions for a powerful counter-narrative. It offers such a stark, beautiful contrast to our frantic pace. Think about, say, Tibetan monks in a monastery. The analysis describes their routine. They get up before dawn, they engage in disciplined effort, chanting, focused meditation, mindful work, real effort. But then comes the key moment, mid-morning perhaps. They just stop, they sit, maybe in silence, maybe just being present under the sun for a good while.
And the crucial part, as you said, is the quality of that stopping. It's not like, okay, I worked hard, now I get my coffee break. There's no internal bargaining, no checking if they've earned it. It's just woven into the fabric of their day. It's fundamental, non-negotiable.
Absolutely. And this wisdom, this radical discernment about when to stop, it wasn't easily won, even for someone like the Buddha. His path to enlightenment, the middle way, came only after years of extreme asceticism, really punishing self-denial. which you could argue was the ancient world's version of hustle culture and burnout. He realized that path, just like pure indulgence, led to the same place: suffering. Real awakening and sustainable effectiveness comes from knowing when to stop. That active, wise choice to cease striving in order to preserve your capacity. That's the radical discernment the sources talk about.
Radical discernment, I like that. It reframes stopping not as giving up, but as a strategic, wise action. And the really mind-blowing part is that modern science is now catching up and basically saying, yeah, they were onto something. It's validating this ancient insight in the lab.
It really is. Neuroscience has shown us just how vital these moments of, let's call it intentional non-doing, actually are. When you're resting or letting your mind wander or daydreaming, your brain activates a specific network. It's called the default mode network, the DMN. For a long time, scientists kind of dismissed it. They thought it was just the brain idling when it wasn't focused on a task.
Idling, yeah, that sounds inefficient, which is
Yeah.
exactly what high achievers try to avoid.
Yeah.
So if the DMN isn't just idling, what is it doing? And how do we make sure we're engaging the useful DMN stuff and not just, procrastinating by doom scrolling social media? That feels like a slippery slope.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The key difference seems to lie in intention and maybe spaciousness. Scrolling is input. It's filling the void. True DMN activation happens when you allow for some emptiness, some processing time. When you genuinely step back from constant external tasks, maybe you take that silent walk, stare out the window for 5 minutes, even just lie down without your phone, your brain gets busy with crucial background tasks. It's consolidating memories, making connections between different experiences, integrating complex information, both emotional and intellectual. And crucially, it's where a lot of spontaneous creativity comes from.
Okay, tell me more about that integration piece. That sounds like the hidden magic. How does just resting actually make you more creative or empathetic?
Well, the DMN seems critical for at least 2 major functions vital for success. First, something called autobiographical planning. It's how your brain links your past experiences to your future aspirations, creating a coherent story of you. If you're always on, always reacting, you don't give the DMN the space to weave that narrative. You lose connection between your history and where you want to go. Second, and this is fascinating, the DMN is heavily involved in theory of mind. That's your ability to imagine what other people might be thinking or feeling. When you rest, your brain literally runs simulations of social scenarios. It's practicing empathy. So you become a better leader, a better negotiator, a better collaborator, not necessarily by doing more out there, but by allowing this crucial internal work to happen.
Wow, so by constantly cramming our minds with more tasks, more information, more alerts, we're actively shutting down the very neural processes that allow for deep strategic thinking, creativity, and empathy. We're basically shooting ourselves in the foot in the name of productivity. So,
Yeah, that's quite the paradox. It absolutely is. And realizing this helps us shift our view of rest. It stops being just passive recovery, crashing on the sofa after you're totally spent. It becomes an active process of alignment. The paradox is stark. Chasing success relentlessly without building in this true DMN engaging rest actually pushes us further away from the clarity and insight we need for meaningful, sustainable achievement. We get busy, sure, but often busy going in circles.
we need a way to anchor this idea of sustainable action. Sources used a great analogy, the river. I found that really helpful. A river has immense power, right? It carves landscapes, flows towards the ocean with purpose, but its power doesn't come from just constantly rushing rapids.
Exactly. The river's strength, its sustained flow, depends entirely on being fed. By quiet springs, by deep, still pools where water collects and settles, by lakes that act as reservoirs. If a river was only rapids, nonstop churning, it would just dry up eventually. It wouldn't have the depth or the reserves. And that's the difference between our cultural obsession with the constant sprint and embracing a more sustainable natural rhythm. This applies directly to how we work. We assume effective means flat out all the time. But wisdom traditions talk about right effort.
Right effort. Okay, that implies effort isn't bad, but it needs to be applied wisely, not just constant.
Precisely. Think about a marathon runner. An expert runner doesn't sprint the entire 26.2 miles. That would be disastrous. Real effectiveness comes from knowing when to push, when to conserve energy, when to maintain pace, even when to strategically walk or hydrate. Right effort isn't about maximizing force, it's about maximizing the wisdom in how you apply your energy, knowing the difference between a necessary surge and sustainable cruising.
Okay, so this changes the whole purpose of rest. It's not just about fixing the damage from overwork. It's about actively aligning yourself with the source of your energy, your creativity, your purpose. The examples you mentioned earlier framed it as almost an act of reverence.
Yes, exactly. Consider the entrepreneur who starts her day with 20 minutes of meditation. Not guided, just sitting. She's not necessarily doing it as a productivity hack to clear her inbox faster, although that might happen. She's doing it to remember who she is beneath the job title, the KPIs, the investor pressure. It's a return to her core why.
Or the artist taking a silent walk in nature. Not actively brainstorming, maybe not even looking for inspiration directly, but creating space. Reverence, as you said, for the mystery behind creativity. Acknowledging that ideas flow through you and that channel needs tending, needs quiet.
And that's how we can start to practice rest differently. Maybe the invitation isn't always to rest more, which can feel impossible sometimes with real-world demands, but to rest with a different quality. It shifts from being a guilty escape you snatch when you're about to collapse to becoming a sacred return, a non-negotiable pit stop for fuel and alignment. It stops being a break from your life and becomes a deeper dive into the currents that actually sustain your life.
Okay, but this is the tough part, the practical application. You close the laptop, you decide to take that walk, and bam! That inner critic, the guilt monster, shows up immediately. What are you doing? You should be working. How do we handle that moment?
That is the moment of practice, the absolute crux of it. And it requires awareness and, frankly, self-compassion. So the next time that voice pipes up, you're falling behind, this is lazy, the first step is just to pause. Don't automatically obey it. Notice the thought, maybe even silently label it. Oh, there's the guilt voice. Then, gently, curiously ask yourself, who is this part of me that's so afraid of stillness? It's usually the voice of that conditioned self, the one that thinks its worth is purely transactional. And the practice itself can be incredibly simple but profound. Maybe place a hand on your heart, take one conscious breath, and offer yourself the same kindness you'd offer a friend who's burning out. Remind yourself, consciously, my worth isn't measured by my output right now. Rest is necessary. This is wise effort, not laziness. You're choosing conservation over depletion. That moment of self-compassion can act like a circuit breaker for the guilt.
Right, so acknowledging the voice, but not necessarily believing its frantic message. Okay, so if rest creates the space, the DMN does the background integration. What about the quality of attention within that space and within our action? That brings us to mindfulness, or sati.
Exactly, and the way sati is often defined is crucial here. We hear mindfulness and think non-judgmental awareness, which is true, but a deeper, perhaps more useful translation, especially in this context, is remembering what matters.
Remembering what matters. Okay, that feels much more active, more directional than just passively observing.
It really is. Think about it. We live in an age of engineered distraction. Everything is vying for our attention, pulling us towards the urgent but often unimportant. So the ability to consistently, intentionally remember what truly matters, your core values, your long-term goals, the well-being of your team or family, that kind of focused attention isn't just, spiritually nice. It becomes a massive strategic advantage.
Strategically superior. Let's break that down. How does remembering what matters translate into tangible results in business or life, beyond just feeling a bit calmer?
It comes down to cognitive upgrades, essentially. A mind trained in sati, a mind that regularly remembers its true north, shows better executive function. It can regulate emotions more effectively. This means less knee-jerk reactivity, fewer decisions made out of fear or anger, which is huge for leadership. And critically, it develops the capacity to see bigger patterns, to connect dots that others miss because they're stuck in the weeds of constant reaction. It literally reduces the mental friction, the cognitive drag, leading to better quality decisions over time.
That has massive implications. A leader who operates from that place doesn't panic at every market dip or negative comment. They can pause, see the bigger picture, and respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. They maintain clarity under pressure.
Precisely. And it ripples outwards. Think about relationships. Sati allows you to truly listen, not just to the words someone is saying, but to the feelings, the needs, the unspoken stuff underneath. Imagine the impact on team dynamics, on client relationships, even in your family, if you could more consistently hear what's really being communicated. That builds incredible trust and resilience.
And you mentioned it even impacts personal finance. How does mindfulness make you better with money?
It helps you cultivate the crucial skill of distinguishing between a genuine need, something that truly supports your life, your values, your well-being, and a fleeting craving. Craving is often driven by insecurity, boredom, or the desire for a quick dopamine hit or external validation. Sati allows you to pause before you buy, before you invest, before you consume, and ask, is this coming from a place of need, or is it just a craving I'm trying to fill? Honestly, mastering just that distinction could save people from mountains of debt and the endless cycle of chasing external stuff that never quite satisfies. It's about aligning your resources with what actually matters.
Let's make this concrete. with that case study you mentioned, the tech founder in San Francisco. That really illustrated the link between inner work and outer results.
Right. So this was a founder under intense pressure Series B funding round. Investors breathing down his neck, team stress was high. He started meditating, mostly just hoping to cope with the anxiety. But as he practiced consistently, he started noticing something specific with Sadi. He realized his anxiety went through the roof right before board meetings. Not necessarily because the business numbers were bad, but because he was deeply afraid of being judged personally by the investors.
So it wasn't just business stress, it was ego vulnerability playing out as business stress.
Exactly. The fear was about his own image, his own worth being evaluated. Once he saw that clearly, once he remembered what mattered, which was the actual health and mission of the company, not just his ego protection, things shifted. He stopped over-preparing presentations as this kind of defensive shield. He stopped micromanaging his team out of anxiety. He started showing up more authentically, leading from a place of presence, not fear. And the results. His team reported feeling safer, more empowered. Innovation actually picked up because people weren't so afraid to fail, and the investors. They trusted him more because he was being transparent and grounded, not defensive. His outward success became a direct reflection of his inner shift.
That's powerful. Self-awareness translating directly into leadership effectiveness and team morale. So how do we train this kind of attention? You mentioned shamatha. People often think mindfulness means emptying the mind, which feels impossible.
Right, and that misconception trips a lot of people up. Shamatha, often translated as calm abiding, offers a much more accessible approach. It's not about forcing your mind to be blank. It's about learning to rest your attention gently on something, like your breath, and then learning to simply be with whatever else arises, thoughts, emotions, sounds, physical sensations, without getting swept away by them. You don't have to fight the thoughts or judge them. You just notice them and gently return your attention. It's practicing non-resistance to your own inner experience, and that ability to stay present with discomfort, with uncertainty, without immediately reacting or needing to escape, that is like resilience training for the nervous system. It's what allows you to stay grounded in a tough negotiation, or navigate a personal crisis with more clarity.
And this isn't just for monks or CEOs with lots of time. The example of the single parent really brings it home.
Absolutely. Single parents are often juggling an incredible amount, feeling like they have zero time for self-care, let alone meditation. But the analysis suggested a micro-practice, maybe while doing dishes, something mundane. Instead of letting the mind race with worries, just for 90 seconds, choose to fully feel the warm water, see the bubbles, hear the clink of plates, just be present with the physical sensations. It's not about achieving enlightenment at the sink, it's about creating tiny pockets of non-judgmental awareness in the midst of chaos. And in that brief moment, something can shift. Maybe she notices the tension in her shoulders. Maybe she realizes the overwhelm isn't just the tasks, but the lack of compassion she has for herself. That tiny bit of awareness might give her the clarity to ask for help, or set a boundary, or simply be a little kinder to herself. That's shamatha integrated into real life, finding moments of peace not despite the demands, but within them.
Okay, so we've established rest for integration, mindfulness for remembering what matters. Where does this lead us ultimately? You mentioned reframing success itself.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting, maybe even a bit provocative. We've built this foundation of rest and presence. Now we use it to ask a fundamental question about our goals. What if real, deep success isn't about constantly adding more to your life, more achievements, more responsibilities, more possessions? What if it's actually about intentionally, strategically emptying your life? Now, this isn't about becoming a hermit or renouncing the world. It's about release. Releasing the relentless need to prove your worth through constant doing. Releasing the clutter that distracts you from what truly matters.
That idea of emptying reminds me of that classic Zen story, this scholar visiting the master for wisdom, and the master just keeps pouring tea into the scholar's already full cup until it overflows.
Exactly that parable. The scholar, full of his own knowledge, his opinions, his achievements, can't receive anything new. He shouts, "Stop, it's full!" And the master says, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" The modern relevance for us, especially high achievers, is potent. Our minds are often overflowing, full of past wins, future anxiety, strategies, opinions. So crammed with doing and knowing that there's no space left for simply being or for genuine insight to arise, we start mistaking the cup itself, the job title, the company valuation, the external markers for the tea, which represents presence, connection, inner peace, real nourishment. If the cup's always overflowing with frantic activity, nothing truly valuable can actually get in.
So emptying the cup allows us to receive something deeper. This connects to what you said about redefining what we're even chasing, like nirvana.
Right. Nirvana gets portrayed as some far-off mystical heaven, but in its original context, its definition is actually quite practical and psychological. It means the cessation of craving, the end of that constant restless desire for things to be different than they are. It's the end of the inner war between what is and what I think should be. And here's the mind-blowing part. If nirvana is the end of craving, the restoration of inner peace, then it implies that peace, wholeness, true satisfaction, they weren't things we ever needed to earn or achieve externally. They were always available, right here, underneath the noise. So the ultimate insight is, true success isn't really about stacking up external wins, it's about restoring inner harmony.
That completely flips the script on how we measure a successful life. We're so conditioned to look outwards, but this forces a tougher, maybe more honest assessment. And it makes you think, consider the people you know who seem incredibly successful on paper, got the career, the money, the influence. Ask yourself honestly, do they seem deeply peaceful? Do they rest easily? Do they feel whole even when the applause stops?
And if the answer is often no, or I'm not sure, then you have to ask, what has their version of success actually cost them? What have they truly gained if inner harmony isn't part of the equation? The wisdom tradition suggests that true mastery, like the Buddha's awakening, happens within the world, not by escaping it. And from that place of inner stillness, powerful, compassionate action naturally flows.
Which leads to that ideal you mentioned, the bodhisattva, the enlightened being who chooses to stay engaged with the world out of compassion.
Exactly. The bodhisattva is the ultimate model for sustainable, impactful living, you could say. They can serve endlessly, act powerfully, precisely because their actions come from a place of deep inner replenishment, not from a sense of lack or a need to prove themselves. They've mastered that art of resting while acting, of finding stillness within motion. Their energy isn't depleted by their efforts, it's actually generated by their alignment. And that feels like the blueprint we desperately need now. Shifting away from the hustle and conquer model, which often drains resources personal and planetary, towards more of a healer, caretaker, or steward model, someone who creates spaciousness, fosters growth, and leads from alignment, not anxiety.
From hustler to healer, success flowing from alignment, not anxiety. That feels like profound shift in orientation.
It is, and really as we wrap up this deep dive, the key takeaway is seeing how these pieces fit together. Rest, mindfulness, releasing the need to prove. It all leads back to you. When you stop running frantically, when you allow for quiet, you don't find emptiness. You find the person you already are underneath the striving, the one who is always worthy, always enough, spiritual depth and worldly success. They don't have to be enemies. They can be like two wings of the same bird working together. You absolutely can build something meaningful in the world and cultivate inner peace.
So we want to leave you with a final thought, maybe a radical invitation. In this culture that constantly screams, do more, faster. What if the most revolutionary act you could perform today, the most strategic contribution to your work, your life, your well-being, isn't one more hour grinding it out? What if it's actually choosing an hour or even 10 minutes of deliberate, unapologetic silence? Stillness.
Yeah. Just a closing thought to carry with you. This journey isn't really about finding one neat answer. It's about deepening the inquiry within yourself. Keep asking these questions. Because the success, the peace, the validation you might have been chasing so hard out there, maybe it was never out there to begin with. Maybe it's been waiting patiently for you right here, in the quiet spaces you allow yourself to create and inhabit.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into ambition, stillness, and finding that harmony within. Our invitation to you right now is just to take a breath. Maybe let your shoulders drop an inch. Give yourself permission, just for this moment, to simply be. No justification needed. You're not falling behind. You might just be finding your way home.